everybody. Well, welcome back to another edition of the Pluck Lot. And I wanted to interview someone that I recently met, but he's been on the lute world and early music world and many other worlds for the longest time. Mr. Howard Bass or Bass? Is it
Bass.
Bass?
Bass.
Bass. See, I didn't know. I see
Like
the
the
word
ale.
bass.
It's
Yeah,
the
and I
fish,
think
the
bass.
ale, the shoes. Bass.
So I want to thank you for being here because, first of all, you came to my concert in Connecticut when I was doing La Chaquina, and I have heard of your name and what you do, but I didn't know, I haven't met you personally, and I saw you there, I was like, oh no. It's like, when you have lutenists in the audience and you're playing or singing, it's like, oh no, what am I going to do? So tell me, so what part of the United States are you located right now?
I live in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, which is in Berkshire County, the westernmost county and the most beautiful county the in the state. And I moved up here almost exactly a year ago. I spent most of my adult life living in generally in the D.C. area, Washington D.C., or DMV as it's now commonly known. Mostly in Virginia, some of the time in rural Virginia, but mostly around the D.C. area.
And were you always a lute player, or is that something that happened at some point in
Yeah,
life?
that's a good question. No, I was not always a lute player. Um, my first instrument was the violin. I
Oh,
started playing violin when I was 5 years old. Um, I was born and grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. You know where that is?
yes,
On
yes,
Lake
that's where we're
Erie.
going next month for the LSA Fest. I'm so excited I'm going. Are you
Ah,
going?
no, I'm not going to that.
Oh
Um,
no. Okay.
so, no, sorry. I was so I grew up there, and I think I started playing violin because my father played violin. Although, to my knowledge, I don't ever remember hearing him actually play the violin. And I was one of four children. My siblings all played the piano, and they were really good piano players.
Ah,
But I was always the oddball among the four of them.
as we
And
all are, lute players.
of course. So
Unique.
I
Yeah.
started my musical life at about age of 5, playing the violin, and I played until around um, when I was around, I don't know, 5th grade, 6th grade, somewhere in there. I suddenly decided I really wanted to play guitar. Uh, Now, I think the reason I wanted to play guitar was because of rock and roll.
Of course.
And Elvis Presley, this was going back into the 50s, of course. And my first guitar was actually backing up a little bit. When I was in 5th grade, I was a pretty good violin player, and I was asked to play a solo in a school assembly. And the piece that I played was called Two Guitars. It was kind of a version of a gypsy, what they call a gypsy piece, Romany
Were
piece.
you nervous?
No, I don't think I was nervous. I didn't know about being nervous in those days. So it's interesting that my first solo piece for any kind of audience was called Two Guitars. And it was not long after that I decided what I wanted to play was guitar. And uh,
And it sounds like you were drawn to gypsy music. I don't know if I'm generalizing, but I just recently saw your performance with your group and the North Carolina Museum of Art,
uh,
and you were doing music that was somehow folkloric, and it's a gypsy music is considered to be folkloric or autochthonous to certain regions. Is that connected somehow to what you're still doing, or?
no, not really. And we could go into that. I don't think there's any direct connection between gypsy or now what's now more properly called Romany
Right.
music and culture. I mean, it's hard to say they're not connected. It's all music and it's all folkloric and it's. But what we do, Sephardic music, comes from a different tradition. But there's probably some ancient links. Some people like to connect flamenco and all that area of Spain, the southern Spain with the Romani people, which is interesting because it takes me to my next point here and regarding my own musical history. And you can stop me if I'm getting too detailed. But sometime after I started playing guitar, my parents took me to a concert by Carlos Montoya. Does that name ring a bell at all for you?
Yeah, I've heard of the name, and his endeavors.
Montoya was, as far as I know, the first person to tour and play solo flamenco music in concerts. And here he was in Cleveland, Ohio, and my parents decided that since I was playing guitar, I should hear this guy who came from Spain and played just all by himself playing flamenco guitar. It's hard to imagine nowadays somebody just doing a concert of flamenco solo guitar, but that's what he did, and I thought it was fabulous.
And is
And
Montoya before Paco de Lucia, or
yes, yeah, he was
okay,
like
in the
this
in the
Segovia
60s?
generation,
Ah, right.
and um, I was taking music lessons, guitar lessons, in the basement of a music store, and the first floor was a record shop. So when I went to my
Oh,
next lesson, I started looking through the bins for something by Montoya, and I couldn't find anything, but I found a recording, not
you
this
still have
specific
it?
record. It's actually, this is something I bought more recently, but I
Oh, this
found
is it.
this record called The Art of Segovia. And I said to the clerk, "Is this, do you think this is anything like Montoya?" And he said, "Oh, yeah, of course." So, so I bought it and I took it home. And I don't know if you have a moment like this, a life changing moment
Yeah,
in your
yeah,
own history,
we all do.
but I put the record on the record player and I lowered the needle, and the first thing that came out immediately, I thought, this is what I want to do.
Oh, wow.
And the very first things on this Art of Segovia recording is six lute pieces of the Renaissance. Oscar
Wow.
Chiusalti's transcriptions from Italian lute tablature of some pieces that are probably familiar to most lutenists and guitarists these days. And I just immediately knew that that was what I wanted to do in music, and as it turned out, in life. This playing, but it started with classical guitar. So the first thing was to find a teacher in Cleveland, which was not easy. But I did eventually find a good teacher who was not himself a classical guitarist, but he was a really good musician and more of a sort of studio guitarist, played kind of pop music, jazz, background sort of things. Dick
But it's
Lurie
so
was.
interesting that here you are, you pick up an Andres Segovia LP
Uh-huh.
for you kids that are not xennials, or all the different generations. The LP, like he showed you, the big long player. Um, and then you are drawn to Renaissance music.
Right.
I think that we have many guitarists have that in common. They've moved to playing the lute because of Renaissance music.
It certainly was true in I think in a lot of cases, especially for people who are slightly older than you, perhaps. I mean, think these days a lot of people who get interested in early music are going directly to lutes or viols or recorders, whereas in sort of my generation, I think it was more common to play guitar and then move to lute, or play violin and move to viol, something, some progression like that.
Yeah, and do you think it's because there was, I mean, now we have globalization and a push of a button, I could hear anyone on YouTube, but
Right.
do you think that back then it was because there were more concerts with guitar and much less concerts with early music in general?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And I would say in my case, it wasn't just that it was Renaissance music, it was the guitar itself that I was attracted to. So on this recording, for example, there's several things by Manuel Ponce, the great Mexican composer
Yeah.
who worked very closely with Segovia and composed a lot of music for Segovia. And uh, that it was really not so much the Renaissance as and I didn't really know what a lute player was, but
Right.
there, Segovia was touring. He was um, he had inspired other people like Julian Bream. I heard Bream. I heard and Bream came to Cleveland also,
All right.
and that's where I first heard the lute. But so did Presti and Lagoya. Ida Presti was an amazing guitarist, and her husband, Alexander Lagoya, uh, were a guitar duo. So I got to hear, in my teen years, I got to hear a lot of classical guitar and, and Julian Bream playing the lute. But it wasn't really until college when I was majoring in music and guitar was my instrument that actually had something like a lute to play on.
Yeah.
The instrument that the school owned was what we would now refer to as a LSO, a
What is that?
lute-shaped object. A lute-shaped object.
But it wasn't really a lute. It's
It
just
wasn't
shaped
really
like
a
a
lute.
lute. Okay.
It was, it had metal frets. It was very heavy. Um, it had a tinny little sound, but it was enough like a lute that it got me started on actually, learning tablature and starting to play some of the repertoire. And my teacher at American University, where I studied, John Marlowe, also started playing lute around the same time, and we started playing lute duets together. And uh,
Cool.
some of the vocal students asked me if I would accompany them in their recitals, so they did some lute songs, and I learned about John Dowland and all, the English lutenists, and so and gradually over the course of a few years during and after college, I started gravitating away from the guitar and toward the lute, and it was in my early 20s that I started getting much more involved with playing lute, playing in ensembles. Um,
So I have a
expanding.
question. When you
Yeah,
saw
yeah, go ahead.
Julian Bream, when you saw
Yeah,
Julian Bream, you
yeah,
saw
yeah.
him live, right?
I did.
And you saw him playing the lutes.
Yes.
What were your thoughts then when you saw this instrument the first time played live? And how do you see now that experience in retrospective as as a seasoned performer you are, that you played all these instruments, and what do you think about that today?
Uh,
Yeah.
well, uh, first of all, Bream was an amazing musician. He really was a gifted, brilliant musician, and he had a way of bringing whatever music he formed to life. And I started getting his recordings as well, many of which were lute, uh, lute recordings, stuff with ensembles. He recorded a lot of the Morley consort lessons with a consort,
Right.
the Julian Bream consort. He did lute songs with Peter Pears. I mean, he opened up a world for me that I had no ideas about. I had no other experience with early music other than hearing Bream play as a teenager and listening to his recordings. So I know that the way he played lute is not the way people play now,
Right, that's why I'm asking, because it's
and
interesting how
not
people now look at that, yeah. And
yeah,
and check out the educational committee, Lute LSA. is creating a series of videos called Lute Legends, where we're
Uh-huh.
revisiting performers like that. But I want to know about everybody in the
Yeah.
United States and people that have created the lute scene and the lute early music scene, such as you, right? It's such an interesting thing to know that you met this person who we consider a lute legend. And I want to know what you think about that today and your experiences back then. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I suspect that I was not the only one, only guitarist or musician who heard Bream and thought, this is amazing music. This is incredible repertoire. Um, this is a rich area that a lot of people don't know anything about. So I give Bream a lot of credit, and I know I'm not the only one. I think there are a lot of other people out there, certainly in my generation, and I think there's still value in what he did,
Of course.
and I hope that people uh, still listen to his music because uh,
They are historical recordings. Yeah.
whatever you think about the way he played the use of nails, the um, maybe a brighter tone, a different kind of an earlier incarnation of modern lute making. Uh, the way he brought the music to life is really rare, and I don't say I listen to him now necessarily, but it's definitely worth spending some time, hearing what he did.
Now, I know your son is also a lute player. I haven't met him personally.
Oh,
But
sorry. One more thing about Bream,
yes, yes, please
just to
do.
say, he had a great sense of humor,
Oh, he
and
did.
he was brilliant and I think that maybe the first performer I ever heard talk about music from the stage in a concert. And I think he
That's
provided a
enough.
role model for how to describe the music and how to evoke the era from which the music came. And I don't know how much of that is available, um, nowadays with maybe there's some videos of his performances,
Right.
but he
I
would talk about the
I
lute.
don't think there are so many videos of him speaking. I mean, there are some documentaries, but what you're saying is an important key as someone who were there, that he was a storyteller, and that's something
Yeah,
that is so important.
right. He never, but he only did that, so his concerts were, the first half was all lute music. And the second half was all guitar. And I always felt like the lute part was better. Like he was really sharp and really on top of it. And the guitar parts were exciting, but not necessarily exactly flawless. But he never talked in the guitar that I remember in the guitar parts of the program, just only in the lute parts because he knew that it was unfamiliar to people. But
Right,
he
to
really
educate the audience.
he really brought that part of um, talking to an audience in an informal but informative way about the music and the times that it came from. Really,
And it's
really,
tricky to go back and forth between those instruments. I mean, as someone who
yeah,
does that, and there, what
yeah,
when I went to Longy to study with Doc Fronley, um, I was going to go sing,
uh-huh,
and I didn't know that he was there, and then they were taking, I didn't think about taking Luke classes, but they said, well, this is available, and we could also give you a scholarship for playing the lute, and I'm like, okay, but you don't
nice.
have to cut your nails. I'm like, oh no. And now I use sort of a half a nail because I'm going back and forth between different instruments. Do you find doing concerts when you have to play multiple instruments challenging, or does it make it more fun for you? Do you think it makes it more fun for the audience? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I mean, I certainly did it. I did something of the Bream model in my early years. As a performer, I would play lute for half a program and play guitar on the second half. And then when I started really getting into lute, sometimes I would play two or three different instruments in a program. I had a Baroque lute.
Wow.
I had a couple of different tunings of Renaissance lutes, and there were lots of concerts where I did more than one instrument. And now, well, now what I do in most of the concerts that I play in, which is with Trio Sephardi, I
Hmm.
switch back and forth between lute and guitar. But I'm not playing difficult repertoire on either instrument, really. Um, it's it's a challenge. It's a challenge, but lots of people seem to be able to do it. And you do it extremely well. I
Oh,
saw
thank
you.
you.
That was actually
Right now it's more about
it's
how many
actually.
instruments can I fit in the airplane. They don't charge me too
I
much money to
know.
carry
I
all these.
know.
And I think, oh no, I
See,
have to
I
tune all these
remember.
strings. Yeah.
I remember. I I played for a couple of years. I played with the Baltimore Consort when
Yes.
they in their early years. I played. They really wanted me as a bandora player because obviously Ron McFarlane was the lute player and Mark Sudek was there also but they needed somebody to play bandora and they had an instrument which was a terrible instrument, very difficult to play, very difficult to play in tune, and it just. But anyway, I remember going to. I had to meet up with them for concerts in South Carolina, and before that, I had lute programs somewhere else in the general area, and I was carrying a Renaissance lute, a Baroque lute, and the bandora.
Oh dear.
And I wasn't driving. I think I was flying, and I don't know how I did it. It was just insane. Yeah, yeah. That's one reason why I've said to people, if I had my musical life to live over, I would live it as a singer.
Right.
Not
But then you have
carrying the thing.
all the other problems, like if you
Of
get a
course, you have
cold,
other
you
problems,
can't sing and you don't get paid. That
but
makes
you're always carrying your instrument with you, and that
Yeah.
in itself could be could make life a little bit easier sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go
Yeah.
back to the question
So
about your son. So how did your son get
yes, of
into the
course.
lute? Were you the main influence?
So a story I like to tell. This is Jeremy Bass. Story I like to tell about Jeremy and the lute was when he was just a little tiny boy, like 3 years old, 4 years old. Sometimes he would say to me, "Dad, can I hold your lute?" And
Oh,
I'd say, "Yes, of course." And
wow,
I'd
you're
put the
right.
lute in
Really
his
brave.
lap. I'd put the
For a
lute in his. Oh, he
3-year-old.
was very careful,
Okay.
and then he would very gently strum the strings. And but it was actually quite a long time between that and when he started playing lute. He got into guitar playing and played. Well, he played in an Irish band with some other teenagers for several years, and he did some jazz stuff. Uh, and it wasn't until he started college that he got it all into classical guitar. And then, and he didn't major in music. He was gonna major in music, and then he decided not to. Started. I think he majored in. He did a double major in Spanish and international relations or international affairs, something like that. And then after college, he was in the Peace Corps for 2 years. And then after he came out of the Peace Corps, that's when he really started getting serious about music and
Oh,
went back to school, got a master's in guitar performance, um, got a Doctor of Musical Arts (DMA) in guitar performance, but was also playing lute. He studied with Dieter Hemmings at the University of
uh-huh.
Kentucky. And so he was doing mostly guitar and doing a lot of contemporary music. Um, and then after he did his, and he also did a year of Fulbright in a Fulbright year
Wow.
in Spain. And in
Fantastic.
fact, while he was there, he met a number of composers, including David del Puerto, who
Hmm.
composed a guitar duet for Jeremy and me.
Oh,
which was
beautiful.
which we recorded on an album called Then and Now, which has
Okay.
lute duets and guitar duets, and the
Well, I'm
first
certainly
recording.
putting all the links right here for you
Yeah, all
guys if you
right.
want to check
Uh,
out these recordings and Jeremy's website and know more
yeah.
about Howard's son. But tell me more about the Trio Sephardi. I absolutely adore the program. Um, it sort of connects to my heritage to a certain extent
Yeah,
because I do have Spanish heritage.
sure.
And then some of the songs that you performed were songs that I heard as a child.
Really?
So I was singing along. I somehow knew the tune and somehow knew,
Huh?
and these songs have gone all over Latin America and become their own in a way. But it was such a marvelous program. Tell me, you're going to be touring or you're going to start another tour soon with this program or a different program?
It'll be a slightly different program, but all our programs feature songs by Flori Jagoda, uh, who was a sort of mentor for us, and two of us, Susan Gaeta and I, worked extensively with Flori, and we were the Flori Jagoda trio. Um, let's see, backing up a little bit. So Trio Sephardi, we do have a smallish sort of New England tour coming up in mid-July. So we'll be we have three concerts in Vermont, two in Massachusetts, and one in Beacon, New York. And that's mid-July. And the details for those shows are on our website, which is
Yeah, check it out. The
triosephardi.com.
link right here.
Yeah. So, yeah, the music, if for people who aren't familiar with it, it's the music of the descendants of the Spanish Jews who were exiled from Spain in 1492. And when they left Spain, they were supposedly not allowed to take their material goods, but they carried with them their language, their customs, their songs, um, and in exile, they continued to speak the language that they spoke in Spain. And people just, as a sort of generalization, say it was Spanish. Of
Hmm.
course, in Spain at the time, and even now, there were always various dialects from different
Dialects, yeah.
different parts of of the peninsula. But and over time, the language, well, nowadays it's known as Ladino,
Right.
and or Judeo-Espanol, but Ladino is the common term for the language. So it's largely Spanish, as you noted. Sometimes there are words in other languages, Hebrew, Turkish, maybe
Right.
French, other languages in the places where they settled. Um, it was a tradition I knew nothing about until the early 1980s. I was at I was on the staff of a music camp here in Massachusetts, and there were some people there from a group called Voice of the Turtle, which was
Oh, yeah.
A Boston-based ensemble that's what they did. They did Sephardic songs, and they asked me to play with them in the faculty recital at the end of the week. And I said, "Well, I don't know anything about this music." And they said, don't worry, you'll get it." And at first I didn't, but then about a year or two after that, one of the original members of that group, moved to the D.C. area. And at the time, I was casting around for some ideas to start an ensemble with a couple of other musicians. And when Rosalind Stowe moved to the DC area, she got in touch with me, and we started a group called La Rondinella.
All right.
And with that group, we did a mix of Sephardic music and Renaissance music.
And what year
So
was this when you weren't
we
were in
started around
DC?
1985,
Okay.
and we performed mainly in the DC area. We did some touring occasionally. Um, and we made several recordings, which were on the Dorian label, and I think they're still available. Although Dorian was bought up by Sono Luminous a number of years ago. Anyway, you can definitely find them on YouTube. La Rondinella means the swallow.
Okay. Check
And
it out.
we disbanded around the year 2000, and that was right around the time when I started working with Flori Jagoda.
Mm.
And Flori was a refugee. She was born in Bosnia. Actually, when she was born there, she was born in Sarajevo. At that time, it was Yugoslavia.
Right.
And her first language growing up was Ladino, but they also spoke Serbo-Croatian, the language that was common in that area. Her family was very musical, so she heard and learned a lot of songs as a girl growing up. And when World War II broke out, she and her parents, I'm going to shorten this story because it's a long one, but she and her parents and one other relative were the only survivors from her very extended family. Most of them were murdered in World War II. At the end of the war, she met and married an American GI, Harry Jagoda, and came to America. And her parents also came a couple of years after she did, in the late 1940s. Her mother did not want to hear the language. She didn't want to hear the songs. She was so traumatized by what happened to her family that she forbade Flori from speaking the language or singing any of the songs. So it wasn't until the mid-1970s, after her mother died, that Flori started going back and bringing back all these memories, and the music just started flowing out of her. And she came to one of the first concerts that La Rondinella did in the mid-1980s, and she came up afterwards and was very excited. She said, "I love you. I love what you're doing. Would you like to learn some of my music?" And of course we said yes. And that was the first really good introduction to that whole world of Sephardic song and culture and food and
What a
all
great
sorts of
story. It's just so fascinating. I knew that, I'm learning so much from you already, and getting to know your career and everything, some of the things you've done. So, what is so fascinating to you about Sephardi music? I mean, obviously, all music is fantastic, and if I would have 70, 100,000 hours a day, I could just learn it all. But is it part of your heritage, or is it part of your family line, or is it something that you just love?
Yeah, I am Jewish, but I'm not Sephardic.
Okay.
I, and neither are my two teammates in Trio Sephardi. We're all Jewish, but our backgrounds, our family heritage, history, DNA is from Eastern Europe. It's the Ashkenazi branch of the um, Jewish people. Um, and a lot of people will say, well, it's what you're doing is it like klezmer music, which is the music of the Northern European, Eastern European Jews, and but that I never really wanted to play klezmer music. I can't really put a finger on what it is about the music and the culture. It just speaks to me. I just when I started working with Flori, especially, and in the years since, and working with Tina Chansey and Susan Gaeta in the trio, it just feels it's from the heart. And
Right.
and
Yeah.
actually, Flori, it's interesting because she called me up in the late 1990s. She had had a stroke, She was a very good
Oh,
guitar player and a very good accordion player. Um, but she couldn't, after the stroke, she wasn't able to use her fingers as well as she had previously. So she called me up and said, I'm looking for somebody to learn my guitar parts. Would you like to do that? Would you like to be that person? And without even thinking about it, I said, of course. So I started going to her house essentially for music lessons, where we would sit there together and she would teach me her guitar parts, which were really compositions. She really made arrangements of her music, and the guitar parts, she was very meticulous and very demanding about how they should go. And I remember at one point, after maybe several months or maybe a year, she said, "Okay, now you've got the notes. Now I want you to put something of yourself into it." And I thought, I misunderstood. I thought she meant I should improvise.
like make an arrangement or
Yeah,
something.
I'm like do my own thing. But as soon as I departed from what she had taught me, she said, "No, no, 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 no. That's wrong. Go back, go back. We have to go over it again." So it took me a little while to realize what she was talking about was alma, alma,
Uh-huh.
or
Yeah.
nefesh, as they say in Hebrew, your soul.
Your
Uh,
soul.
and she liked to quote something that her grandmother said, which was, um, "If you can't put something of yourself into it, alma, don't bother. Don't bother singing. Don't bother playing." So that
That
sort
is a
of,
beautiful lesson. I mean,
yeah, it
what
was,
you're telling us right now is the essence of creation in music and art. Like, if you're not connected to the art you're making or the music you're making, it's just not going to make a difference for anyone, neither for you.
right.
So, yeah, so since we are getting to the end of the interview, I just wanted to ask you if it's okay to show what instruments you have, or if you have any particular story about any of your instruments. Which one is your favorite? Which you shouldn't say because it's like saying which one is your favorite child.
Um,
But you probably spend more time with one or the other, and that would be really cool for all our viewers to see what instruments you have.
well, to be honest, I have pared down my number of instruments considerably. So this is the lute I've been playing since 1997. It was made by Larry Brown. Um, it's a eight-course Renaissance lute. Now, it belonged to a very close friend of mine named Jim Bertram.
Oh, you
Jim
told me
and I,
that story the day of the concert. Please share it again. I would
yeah,
love
so
everybody to know about this.
I met Jim at American University. He was a year or two ahead of me. Um, he really was a wonderful musician and a great guy and a very close friend. He ended up living out in California and taught at the Cal State Hayward. Lived in the San Francisco Bay Area, Oakland. Um, and I didn't see him very often, but I got out to California occasionally, and sometimes he came east. So we stayed close friends, and in 19 fall of 1997, he had a motorcycle accident
Oh, yeah.
and died from injuries.
Oh,
And I was asked to come out to California for a memorial program, and which I did. And while I was there, his girlfriend said, "I know that Jim wanted you to have his lute." So that's the lute I've been playing ever since.
no. Wow.
And I think a lot about Jim, and I miss him very much because I could
What
call
a
him
moving
at
story.
any time, and he always was full of good advice and good humor. So that's the lute I've been playing. I'm not really doing much in the way of early music these days. Uh, with the trio, I switch back and forth between lute and guitar. Flory, by the way, only wanted me to play guitar. She said, "Don't use the lute, honey. It's too pretty."
I was gonna ask you. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. Including the lute in the Sephardi
yeah,
music.
well, if you were playing, I mean, a lot of people in Sephardic music are using the oud,
Right.
and that's perfectly appropriate. But whatever works and whatever is
Whatever
what you feel
works.
most
Yeah.
comfortable with. This is a guitar I'm playing. I bought it from my son Jeremy. It's made by Marshall Brunet from Chicago, and I have to tell you that other than the Sephardic music I'm doing with the trio, um, I've gone back to what I consider my first love, which was classical guitar.
Oh,
I,
okay.
I've been spending a ton of time in the past year or so, maybe more, um, trying to recapture some of that old magic. I
Yeah.
mean, I'll never play the way I did. I'll never have the facility that I had. I'll never memorize as much music as I had
Yeah, it's
memorized.
hard memorizing.
Um,
Yeah.
but it's I've said it's like going back to your first girlfriend or maybe your first boyfriend. Like you fell in love for the first time. I fell in love for the first time when I heard Andre Segovia on this Art of Segovia
There you
recording that
go.
I showed you earlier.
So what
And
repertoire are
so,
you taking over? Like, what are you going
well,
back to?
at the moment, I'm working on a program. I have a solo concert scheduled in November.
Oh,
The program is a tribute to Segovia. So I'm
oh.
doing music that he performed, most of it music that was composed for him. But I'm planning to start the program with the six lute pieces from the Renaissance, the first
Oh,
things I read.
wow. How fantastic.
Yeah, I mean it's very basic. I mean
Full
anybody can
circle right
play
there. Yeah.
guitar, but I felt like I should start with that because it's where I really began my musical life, in earnest.
Yeah.
And
It tells your story in a way you
yeah,
know. Yeah.
yeah. Um, I, I'll mention one other thing about myself.
Yeah,
Well, I'll
of
mention
course.
two other things. I have five children, um, and a dog. The children are off doing other things, college, grad school. Jeremy playing music. Jeremy lives in the Netherlands
Oh,
now and plays in a couple of ensembles there. My other son, Matthew, Jeremy's twin brother, is an attorney. I also had a very long career as a program producer at the Smithsonian
oh.
in DC.
I
So,
didn't know this. Tell me more about that.
so I was originally hired as a to come once a week to the Museum of American History and talk about lutes and guitars for 1 hour once a week.
The dream
And
job.
and I got and it was I think it paid $25 or $35 per session. I was hired to do that by Jim Weaver, James Weaver, a harpsichordist, who was the founder of the Smithsonian Chamber Players, and he became sort of my mentor and father figure at the Smithsonian. After a number of years of doing that, um, I had volunteered to help with a twice a month music series, and the guy who ran that series abruptly left, and I was asked to take it over. That was in 1981,
Talk about being in the right place at the right time.
and yeah,
Yeah.
and I said yes, and over time that developed into a full-time job. I produced programs at the American History Museum for 20 years, and then for 10 years at the American Indian Museum.
Cool.
And so that was a whole other career that a lot of people don't know about. Uh, and it was very rewarding. It was wonderful to be in a situation where I was working a lot with musicians, but rarely with musicians who were in the world that I inhabited as a musician. And I was able to also continue to perform and play and teach uh, throughout those years as well. So That was my
Wow.
other part of my other life. And but what I say to people, like anybody else, I've had my ups and downs in life, but virtually everything that's good in my life has come to me through music.
What a
Meeting
wonderful
people,
message. Yes.
friends, opportunities to perform, opportunities to travel. Um, it's just music has been something that's been, oh, it's always been there. It always will be there one way or another. And I feel very lucky to have had this opportunity to do what I've done over so many years.
And I feel very lucky to have met you and actually had this conversation. I wish I had many more hours to, because, your memoirs will be fantastic. But this is just a little window so people know what you do. And that's what I love doing. I want to share what everybody does because there's always hidden things that we don't know about people like your career as a program director. Thank you so much for joining me for this interview, and please everybody check out all the links and the pictures that I post, and I guess I will see you around, maybe in DC, maybe in Massachusetts. I hope we could cross paths one more time. So I'm gonna stop the recording here and continue maybe talking a little bit more with Howard. But thank you everybody for watching, and please follow us at SaSa Sounds plucklot.com, and you can find our link in Lute Society of America. Again, I'm SaSa, North Carolina chapter lead of the Lute Society of America. Thank you everybody for watching. Bye bye.